I work on boats that transport different goods around, different parts of the world. So we like to travel across the ocean. So I've been everywhere. I'm not going to say exactly where we were, but it had been a few days since we took off from shore. The next boat behind us took off 4 hours after we did. This was the time of the year where we run into a lot of ice islands or glaciers, so we were used to this. This time, it was a little different. I remember us doing our usual and all of a sudden we hit something. We always graze ice, but we continue to move. This time we hit it and it stopped almost immediately. It was in the middle of the night, so we looked overboard and we couldn't see anything. So we shined our big spotlight on what was in the way, and it was a big ice chunk. We also noticed a huge hole in the side of the ship and water was rushing in. Then noticed that the ship was sinking. We knew another ship was coming this way, so we felt okay with what was happening because we knew that ship can help us. We got in contact with that ship and they said they were actually 5 hours away and not 4. The ship was sinking at a rapid pace, so we all exited the ship and got onto a huge ice island. There were about 20 of us on this big chunk of ice just watching the ship sink. An hour went by and one of the other workers asked,
"What's that?"
Everyone spotted what he was talking about. We all saw 2 glowing eyes on a head that was slightly sticking out of the water. It was just floating there. We could tell that it was eyeballs because of the moonlight. It had to be at least 300 feet away from us. So as we're standing there were at least 5 small ice islands between us and whatever that was in the water. But it wasn't moving. We all watched it as it was watching us watch the boat. So some of us quit paying attention to it, and another hour goes by. Then someone yells out that it was moving. Everyone looks at it again, and those eyes were moving closer to us in the water, with that head halfway out of the water. At this time, it gets to an ice island, and it stops. It doesn't get on the island. It's still far away from us, but it's closing in. Then we see it get out of the water and it climbs on the island. Then one of the guys says, "Oh my God, that's a polar bear." It stood there and it stared at us, and it was sniffing in the air. It was trying to figure us out. Then it walks forward and then it jumps back into the water and begins to swim toward us again. It was closing in, but then it stopped again and was just watching us. So it watched us for about 20 minutes. Then it began to swim again. And at this time the sun was coming up and we could clearly see that its head was sticking out of the water. And when it came upon another island, it climbed up on it and began to watch us even more. At this time, it was about 100 feet away from us. It had to be about 2 more islands before it got to us. Everyone was afraid, and at this time it was moving slowly. And that helped ease our anxiety, honestly. We knew that the other boat would be there in about 2 hours at this point. Then the bear jumps back into the water and it swims toward us. But at this time, it was going at a faster pace. It climbs on the island next to ours, and everyone on our island runs to the opposite side of our island. But there was nowhere else to go after that. We couldn't jump in the water because we'd freeze to death. Then it stares for a few seconds and then it jumps back into the water. And it swims, and then it climbs onto our ice island. But it was going slowly. As soon as it gets to our piece of ice, it just stands there and it stares at us. Everyone was freaking out. Then it starts walking toward us. And out of nowhere, it became very aggressive and running toward us and making noises, grunting. We were all moving and trying to stay away from it. Then I heard something as I was running that I would never forget. There was this guy named William. He began to scream in a way that I can still hear it in my head today. I looked back and the polar bear had him. It was clawing at him, on top of him. Then he stops making noises and quits moving. But the polar bear continued to do what it was doing. We knew he was dead. Then it took his body in the water, then onto the next ice island, and it feasted. It did it slowly. Very slow. The worst part of it is that The polar bear never took his eyes off of us as it ate, so it was pretty much telling us that we were next and there was nothing that we could do about it. Another hour went by and it stopped. There was red everywhere. The polar bear was not white anymore. It began to walk toward the edge of the ice island it was on, and then we heard a loud horn. We looked in the distance and it was another ship. It was the ship that we were talking about. The polar bear stopped. Then it turned and looked at the ship, then began to walk toward the edge again. Then the ship blew the horn again over and over. They noticed what was happening. The bear stopped and it turned. Then it looked at us. Then it looked at the ship again. And it just stood there, looking back and forth. Then it turned away from us, jumped in the water, and simply just swam away. We all just sat there staring at William on the other ice island, as it didn't even look like him. He was lifeless. Everyone was crying or they were in shock. Eventually the other ship came and got us. We retrieved what was left of William and we got out of there. That day mentally scarred everyone who was there, and it's something that we can't forget.